Chief Minister of Meghalaya Conrad K Sangma today gave the government's point-by-point response to the Voice of the People's Party's 10-point Charter of Demands during the autumn session of the Meghalaya Legislative Assembly. The short-duration discussion was moved by Nongkrem MLA Ardent Basaiawmoit. The Chief Minister ruled out any permanent construction on Lompongdeng Island, saying it had been excluded from the Omyam 5-star hotel project following representations from local stakeholders. He also dismissed concerns over, quote, privatization, unquote, asserting that land ownership remains with the state government under tourism PPP projects. On the Vpp's demand to withdraw anti-teacher measures, Conrad Sangma clarified that the teacher's eligibility test requirement stems from central legislation and a Supreme Court directive rather than state policy. He said the government has filed a review petition and is conducting MTET regularly to safeguard teachers' interests. He also defended the Meghalaya Private Colleges Act, saying it strengthens employee welfare and financial accountability. Conrad Sangma asserted that the MPSC enjoys constitutional safeguards against political interference and highlighted a series of recruitment reforms, including automated scrutiny, tamper-resistant examinations, publication of answer keys and disclosure of candidates' marks. On the district selection committees, he announced a comprehensive SOP to streamline recruitment procedures, plug inconsistencies, and reinforce transparency, accountability, and merit-based selection across districts. On illegal influx and border security, the Chief Minister of Meghalaya said the government has stepped up its anti-infiltration mechanism through 18 checkposts and gates, 12 district task forces, and coordinated operations between the state police and the BSF. Sangma also pointed to the implementation of the Meghalaya Resident Safety and Security Act and migrant worker registration measures, which he said were aimed at protecting the state's demographic interests.
I rise to reply to the short duration discussion tabled by Honorable Member from Nongkrem, supported by Honorable Member from Maulai and Honorable Member from Morankaneng, on the 10-point charter of the Voice of the People Party. So the issues raised in the charter merit a careful examination of both the facts and the actions taken by the government. I would therefore like to place before this august House the factual position on each matter and the steps undertaken by the government. And the records will show that every action has been taken within the framework of the Constitution, the laws of the land, and the directions of the competent authorities, while keeping the welfare of the people of Meghalaya at the forefront. Is the depoliticization of the recruitment under the MPSC and the DSC. Sir, it must be placed on record that the independence of the MPSC from political interference is not a matter left to executive discretion. It is a constitutional guarantee. The chairman and members of the commission are appointed by the governor under Article 316 of the Constitution of India. Under Rule 4 and 5 of the MPSC Regulations, 1972, the commission consists of a chairman and 4 members holding office for a term of 6 years or until attaining the age of 62 years, whichever is earlier. Crucially, the chairman or any member can be removed from office only in the manner provided under Clause 1 and 3 of the Article 317 of the Constitution, and the conditions of service of a member cannot be varied to their disadvantage after appointment. Further, the MPSC falls within the jurisdiction of the Meghalaya Lokayukta, constituted under the Meghalaya Lokayukta Act 2014. Any allegations of bribery or favoritism is subject to independent statutory scrutiny, entirely outside the control of the government of the day. Now let me place on record the reforms that this government has undertaken. In November 2024, we constituted a dedicated MPSC Reforms Committee chaired by Professor David Siemle, himself a former chairman of the Union Public Service Commission. It consulted the public and we implemented its report. Today, any candidate or citizen can be rest assured that the syllabus, the candidate to vacancy ratio, and the selection process are pre-declared in the advertisement itself. Discretion is removed before the process begins. Number 2, applications are scrutinized through automatic recruitment processing software. Number 3, OMR-based examinations are tamper-resistant and auditable, with answer keys published after every exam, with 7 full days to challenge them. D, the marks of every qualified candidate across the screening test, interview, and the totals are published on the MPSC website, with individual marks viewable at every stage through the portal megrecruitment.nic.in/RPA marks. E, a public facilitation center has been established to handle candidate inquiries and provide necessary information. Additionally, the grievances cell of the MPSC is available for receiving representations or grievances from candidates through an online portal, rpa.meghalaya.gov.in/MPSC grievance. Sir, I shall now address the concerns relating to the district selection committees. These committees handle recruitment to district level posts under the offices and establishments of districts and subdivisions that do not fall within the purview of the MPSC or the departmental selection committees. They are created to conduct recruitment to local posts close to the communities served, while maintaining fairness, transparency, and administrative efficiency. The present composition of the DSC, a chairperson, a non-official vice chairman, 2 non-official members, and a member secretary, is not an ad hoc arrangement. It has remained unchanged since 1982 and has been consciously reviewed and retained by successive governments over more than 4 decades. This continuity reflects a deliberate administrative judgment that balances official oversight with community participation. A fundamental objective of the DSC framework is to build local oversight into recruitment. The inclusion of non-official members brings the perspective of communities served by the district administration and keeps decision-making inclusive. At present, the chairman and member secretary are already senior officers of the district administration. So while the core principles have remained sound, experience shows that different districts have at times followed varying practices in vacancy scrutiny, examination schemes, question paper setting, evaluation, answer key finalization, interviews and declaration of results. And because of these practices evolved through multiple office memoranda, executive instructions and circulars, there is at present no single consolidated procedural framework. And this has caused avoidable inconsistencies, delay and litigation risks. Sir, the government has therefore decided, I repeat, sir, the government has therefore decided to introduce a comprehensive standard operating procedure that harmonizes all existing instructions into a single, sequential, and legal coherent framework applicable across all districts. Sir, I would also like to place on record the details of employment opportunities provided to the youth over the last 3 years. Sir, over 9,000 vacancies have been advertised in the last 3 years. 1,011 appointments were made through MPSC alone. 2,413 police vacancies have been filled through the Central Recruitment Board. 769 doctors have been appointed through the Meghalaya Medical Services Recruitment Board. 1,686 appointments were made through the DSC. So therefore, this recruitment took place in the last 3 years alone. Tarabari in West Khasi Hills, Gizang West Khasi Hills, Hahim in West Khasi Hills, Boklapara, Khanapara and Ratachera. Sir, these are not easy decisions. These are not simple decisions. So they are very, very complicated and vexed decisions. But the government has ensured that we strengthen the border security by ensuring that our land is protected at the border area. So with utmost, respect to all the past governments, we have seen how complicated this was, and hence for many, many decades, we could not move forward in this issue. But realizing the challenge and always maintaining that principle in our hearts. So we have a very strong principle we always believe. And that principle is that there is a purpose of why we are here today. There is a reason why God has given us this opportunity. And we will ensure that we do everything in our capacity to resolve problems that could not be resolved in the past. To do things that decades later, 50 years later, people will look back and say that it was this government that did these works. And this is that principle that drives us even today to take some of the toughest decisions that we have taken. I'm sure, sir, I don't want to list all the decisions, but they have been very tough for us. But we did it with that simple principle that we are here to make a difference. Sir, along the Indo-Bangladesh and interstate border, 18 anti-infiltration checkposts and check gates. Sorry, I just have some water. A railway facilitation center and a land custom station have been established, sir. So district special squads have also been stationed at the headquarters of all 12 districts to conduct extensive anti-infiltration drives. So border management is a security function undertaken in close coordination between the state and the BSF. The BSF being stationed near the international border serves as the first line of defense, while the state police deployed at nearby police stations, outposts and checkposts provide the second line of defense. Surveillance is maintained through regular joint patrolling and Naka checking along the international borders. Electronic surveillance equipments, including high-density lights, has also been installed at strategic locations to deter illegal intrusion. To strengthen the detection of illegal infiltration and regularly monitoring and regularly monitor anti-infiltration measures, the government has constituted 12 district task forces for the detection of Bangladeshi nationals. These task forces undertake regular checking and special drives. Surprise checks are also conducted once every month by joint teams comprising a magistrate, personnel of district police force, and staff of the infiltration branch. A state-level committee headed by the Principal Secretary or Secretary Home Political has been constituted to identify foreigners residing illegally in the state. The committee is mandated to identify foreigners who have overstayed since 1st of January 2011 and submit monthly reports to the Ministry of Home Affairs. In addition, a lead intelligence agency mechanism with the Border Security Forces as the nodal authority conducts regular coordination meetings with the Meghalaya Police, Central Paramilitary Forces, and Central Intelligence Agencies. So the teacher eligibility test is not a state policy, sir. So they were mentioning about the MTET. Now the teacher eligibility test is not a state policy, sir. It is a central law. It flows from the Right of Children to Free and Compulsory Education Act 2009. And it has been made binding by the Honorable Supreme Court of India in its judgment of 1st of September 2025. So the Supreme Court has directed that every in-service teacher of class 1 to 8 with more than 5 years of service left must clear the TET by 31st of August 2028. Teachers with less than 5 years left need not clear it to continue. So this judgment binds all governments and this House alike, and every action that we take should be within the framework of the Constitution. However, the government continues, sir, to adopt various measures for the well-being of the teachers. Sir, I personally took up the matter to raise the concerns of the teachers with the Honorable Union Minister of Education. The state government itself filed a review petition before the Supreme Court against the retrospective effect of this judgment. And the largest teacher organization body, the Meghalaya SSA Teachers Association, has independently done the same. In view of the welfare of teachers, especially those who are seniors and experienced, the state government is providing for MTET and to be conducted frequently so that a teacher's service is not jeopardized. Sir, I want to also very clearly mention in this aspect that when it came to this particular test, the Supreme Court mandated the TET. Now, some of our teachers had taken many eligibility tests in the past. And so the teachers argued, why are we having to go through this again? And that's a very valid point, sir. So what we have told them is that we have now put up a review petition in the Supreme Court. Now, if the review petition says that the old test which we conducted is equally applicable to this, we won't have to conduct the test anymore. But what if the Supreme Court says, no, it is not? Then we are back to square one. So our suggestion and request to the teachers was, the best way to resolve this forever is just conduct this MTET once and for all. And this is not a marks thing. It's about 158 marks. If I may be wrong, 1 or 2 points here and there. You have to only qualify. So out of 158, you have to get 50 marks, something like that, plus minus. Which means any teacher who gets 51 or who gets 149, both are qualified, sir. So this is not something that is you're going to be judged based on the marks you get. You simply have to qualify. So that is the fix that we were in from the Supreme Court, from the teachers, and from the procedure that we had to follow. And hence we requested and we talked to the teachers. I had talks with them at my level, sir. Closed door meeting, open door meeting, whatever you call it, sir. And we figured out how to move forward, and we explained to them that it's not something that we want to do. We don't want to force you to do anything. But we have a situation here. How do we handle this situation? If tomorrow Supreme Court says the old tests taken are not acceptable by Supreme Court, we will be in a position or situation where then we will have no choice and Supreme Court will say, now terminate those teachers. What do we do then? And that is not what we want to do. And hence, let's prepare from now on to avoid that situation in case Supreme Court comes up with that particular order. And that is the background, sir, of this particular examination. But I'm very happy, sir, that a lot of teachers have participated. We have seen positive participation. Of course, challenges will always be there, but there'll be multiple rounds and teachers will be given multiple opportunities to clear this eligibility test. And we are still waiting for the Supreme Court's order. We hope that will come out in our favor, which will then ensure that most of the teachers will not have to take this particular MTET if the old test taken by them is also recognized by the Supreme Court, sir. The question asked today, the annual grant in aid released towards salary of private college teachers in the state, sir. So this is annual amount. So the answer is 186 crores is released annually towards salary of 1,166 lecturers in private colleges. And just to share with the House, sir, there are some colleges where government, these are deficit colleges, where government is giving close to 25 crores a year for one college. And there are another 3-4 colleges, some are getting 15 crores a year only for salaries. And these are all private colleges, deficit colleges. And as I said, 186 crores is being given to 1,166 lecturers. In fact, sir, the maximum amount, the second question asks, what is the maximum amount a private college teacher gets? So the state government is paying, sir. Let me again reiterate. So the maximum amount, the salary the teacher gets or lecturer gets, one of them, which is the highest, sir, is 46,64,000 a year. Government of Meghalaya pays, which roughly comes up to about 4.5 lakhs per month to one teacher, sir, one lecturer of a deficit college. And that is more than what Chief Secretary or in fact Chief Minister or anybody gets, sir. So 4.5 lakhs per month is given to one particular professor and lecturer. And like that, so there are many others who are given large amounts. So my point is not to bring out the amount that they get. My point is to let the House know that it is incorrect to say that government does not care about them. It is because we care for them and for the education system that we are giving this money. So 186 crores every year. This is not a one-time amount, sir. Every year for 1,166 teachers we spend, and these are not government teachers, sir. These are all private teachers, but government. So we do care, sir, is what I'm trying to say. We do care. If we had not cared, we would just simply stop everything. And we're not stopping, sir. We are, of course, restructuring and we're trying to see how to make it more efficient. Because, again, sir, in the same colleges, we have got a lot of discrepancies. Some of the professors are getting 4,50,000, whereas there are some of the lecturers teaching the same subject, they're getting 30,000, 50,000. So there's a discrepancy there also because they're not under the, under the scale that is being given under deficit. Sir, for any state, any country to move forward, you need investment from outside. That is what growth is. Investment happens, growth happens when investment takes place. So therefore, we have to get investments. So that's how things move forward. So many questions were raised about, companies like Shree Cement coming in. So Shree Cement today is the second largest cement company in the country. They're the second largest in the country. And they're a very known organization throughout the world, and especially in the eastern region. So a company of that stature today is wanting to come in and invest in our state. I think, sir, it's a great plus for us that we should look at the aspects of all the different aspects and ensure that we get investments like these that are coming in. Now, obviously, sir, when this happens, there are concerns. It does not mean that we are going to bulldoze any concern. It does not mean that we are going to not follow any rules or regulations. We must follow all the rules. We must follow all the regulations, sir. And so, in fact, even in this issue, there are a lot of concerns that are being raised about the public hearing. Sir, in large number of these public hearing cases, in the past also we have seen that apart from the local people who are involved in the public hearing, there is always a tendency for people all the way from other districts, faraway districts, to come in and be part of the public hearing. So the public hearing is meant for the stakeholders and meant for the landowners and the people in that surrounding areas, sir. And these were the challenges that took place even with the hearing of Shree Cement. But at the same time, there were challenges like this happening for all public hearings, and we've seen this happening quite sometimes, sir. And just to share with the House, sir, that we have also decided that since the concerns are there, we have put up a fact-finding committee to look into all the concerns that are there, that are raised in this in regards to the public hearing of the Shree Cement. And we will ensure that we go into all the different aspects and concerns that are being raised by the people. But I think as a larger note, sir, as I said, investment is what we require. And therefore, whatever the areas are there, obviously, as I said, there's a procedure for every aspect. Everything that we do is based on procedures, sir. So therefore, we will have to follow those procedures. One cannot bypass those procedures. So to say that we as a government are just simply going for, creating an opportunity for outsiders to come in and invest is giving the image that we are trying to just sell our land or sell things away. It doesn't work like that, sir. That's not the intention of our government. The intention of our government is to bring in investment, because it is with investment and industrial growth and economic growth that jobs are created. So while we bring in investment from outside, yes, we need to protect our people, we need to protect our environment. There are measures for it. There are procedures for it. And that's what we should stick to and follow. But simply to say that we don't want any investment for outside, we don't want any economic development from outside, and yet we say we want the jobs, is being completely, you're not having the same, you're contradicting yourself, sir. So therefore, you cannot contradict yourself by saying that we don't want investment, but we want the jobs. We don't want investments, but we want to, see that our state moves forward. So there are balances and checks and balances that we need to maintain. That is what we've been doing. We've been working towards that. And as I said, sir, that yes, there have been many points that have been mentioned. I have tried to clarify all the points. It's a very long agenda that was mentioned. As far as possible, sir, I have tried to clarify all the issues. And of course, sir, that we'll have more occasions in the future also, if they need to discuss any further issue. And with these few clarifications, sir, I hope that I have been able to satisfy the honorable mover of the short duration discussion, sir. And with that, I resume my seat. Thank you, sir.